Hi, my name is Sarah Poche and I teach at Tangipahoa Parish School District. I work at Hammond Eastside Magnet School teaching 6th grade world history and ancient civilizations. So today we are going to be looking at the ancient Chinese dynasties and the Shang, Zhou, Qin, and the Han dynasties specifically. We're going to be focusing on the objective of finding the characteristics of each dynasty and also the achievements of each dynasty. And so in previous lesson, we looked at really the geography of the Yellow River Valley where all of these dynasties are, and we also looked at what a dynasty is. And so today's lesson of finding the characteristics and achievements of each dynasty is really going to help us build that prior knowledge for our next lesson, which is where the students are going to be archaeologists and they are going to excavate a sandbox filled with artifacts. And so each group is going to be a different dynasty and they're going to have to figure out which dynasty they are unearthing, looking at those artifacts and using their prior knowledge of what characteristics and achievements that dynasty had. And so that's what we're going to be doing today. Dynasties. Okay, so last class period we really looked at the geography of the Yellow River, right? And we looked at reasons why people settle near a river. Let's review really quick. Why do people settle near a river? Yes?
It has water in it. It's an extra food source.
Food source?
So they can have fertile soil.
Fertile soil for growing crops.
So they have water.
Water to drink.
Transportation.
And transportation. Very good. Okay, so on Tuesday, you guys are going to come into the classroom and you guys are going to come as archaeologists. You will have, each student will have gloves and a mask, and there will be a sandbox for each excavation group. This is your excavation group, okay? So you guys actually get to be archaeologists, and you are going to have some tools, some paintbrushes, some little shovels, and you're going to have to dig through the sandbox and unearth or excavate, right? It's excavating the ground. You're going to have to excavate an artifact. And so the 4 dynasties, they're all along the Yellow River, right? So if I'm an archaeologist and I find a bronze tool, how do I know what dynasty it came from? Didn't they all happen around that same area? How do I know which dynasty it's from? Yes?
You would maybe each dynasty had their different zones they lived in.
Okay, maybe they had different zones that they lived in. Does anyone else want to, yes?
Maybe try to see what time it was from.
Maybe you could date it and try and figure out what time it was from. Okay. Anybody else? Yeah?
Each dynasty might use like some sort of special symbol or something.
Okay, very good. So each dynasty might use a different symbol, or there might be a characteristic that makes that dynasty really special, so they might use bronze in a different way. Does that make sense? One dynasty might use bronze, and another one might use iron. And so if one group finds iron and another group finds bronze, then you can kind of have an idea of what dynasty you're unearthing, right? But in order for us to actually succeed as archaeologists, we have to know a little bit about each dynasty, right? And so that's what we are going to be focusing on today. We're going to be looking at the Shang dynasty, the Zhou dynasty, the Qin dynasty, which is my favorite. I'm so excited to talk to you all about it, and the Han dynasty. So someone tell me, what is an achievement? What's an achievement? Yes?
Something that they accomplish over the years that's like big, like writing.
Okay, very good. So she even gave me an example. An achievement is something that they accomplished over time. It's something big, right? Like writing, right? Mesopotamia, they created what? What writing system? Cuneiform. That's an achievement. That's a big deal, right? So that would be an achievement, okay? Someone tell me what a characteristic is. This one's a little bit more difficult. I've noticed, yes.
Like a trait of something.
A trait, right? So with Egypt, let's use Egypt as an example since we've already learned about Egypt. Tiana, if Egypt is hot, right? It's hot and it has deserts. That's a characteristic. That's describing Egypt. But the fact that they had pyramids or a shadoof for irrigation purposes, right? That would be an achievement. Does that make sense? They also use bronze to create weapons. So that would definitely be an achievement. So go ahead, we're going to use bullet points here because there's a lot of information that we're going to be putting down when you're working with your groups. So are we in notable characteristics or are we in achievements? Achievements, very good. So when we're in our excavation groups, if you find a bronze weapon in your sandbox, which it won't really be a weapon, it'll just be bronze, you can assume, okay, maybe this came from the earlier dynasties, right? That were using bronze. Excavations. Here is an example of their writing system, and then some bronze weapons and a farming tool. Does anyone remember what that farming tool was called? I talked about it. Yes. Starts with an S. That's remember? Yeah.
Sickle.
A sickle. Very good. Yeah. Good job. Very good. All right. And so this is just an example. We're going to see how the dynasties grew over time. So it starts off right here. You can see the Yellow River is going right through that dynasty. It starts off kind of small, and it is also on a coast. All right, our next dynasty, the Zhou dynasty, which always trips people up because it starts with a Z, but it's pronounced Zhou. So we are on the first box where it says notable characteristics under the Zhou dynasty. It was the longest dynasty, so we're going to make sure that we write that down under notable characteristics. So we know that in order for a dynasty to end, it has to either the family ends, right, the bloodline ends, or they're overthrown. In this, the eldest son is dead, and who becomes emperor? The youngest son. Basically, the advisor is running things, right? Okay, so that is not even like close to being over. So we know he's a psycho, we know he's crazy. He wanted to live forever, but he was really worried about the afterlife. So he decided that in his tomb, he was going to build some warriors to protect him in the afterlife. You might have seen them on your math book. Yeah. So he decides to create 8,000. 8,000, that's like our school times 8. 8,000 clay soldiers made out of terracotta, which is a clay. 8,000 of them to guard him in the afterlife. So here's his tomb, and then there's 8,000 clay soldiers around it. Even clay horses and chariots, everything to guard him in the afterlife. Okay, so they accomplished so much. One of the great things that they did is they built a road system, which really helped with trading. You know, you might have heard of the Silk Road before. Yeah, okay, so they built, which is an achievement. I'm calling out achievements for you. He developed a road system. And also, I think the terracotta army is definitely an achievement. I mean, that is very, very impressive. 8,000 soldiers. And then the one thing that's kind of a big deal still today, the Great Wall of China. So he actually started the Great Wall of China, which is 1,500 miles long. He also standardized money. Okay, so in some parts of China, they would use a certain type of money, and then it'd be like if we use Louisiana money and Mississippi used Mississippi money. And in order to do business, we would have to trade out. That would be really complicated, right? So he decided to unify it and have everyone use the same type of money. He also unified the Chinese alphabet and cut it down from 3,000 characters. I think it was a couple hundred after he was finished. All right, last dynasty is the Han Dynasty. And it goes from 207 BC to 220 CE. It ends with the Han Dynasty overthrowing the Qin Dynasty. And they made a ton of changes. First of all, they followed some of Confucius's beliefs and really valued his literature, which we're going to look at in a little bit. He also created a civil service exam, which is a huge achievement. He created a civil service exam. So what this is in the Qin dynasty, and even in the Zhou dynasty a little bit, the emperor would say, okay, my son's going to be a government official, my cousin's going to be a government official, my nephew, my best friend, right? He would give it to friends and family, right? Is that fair, that we were giving political positions to our BFFs and family members? No, right? So what the leaders of the Han dynasty decided is that you should have to pass a test. You should actually know things in order to rule a government, right, and be a government official. So they developed this test, and it tested their knowledge of Chinese law, of certain math even, Chinese traditions and history. And in order to serve as a government official, you actually had to pass this test. So we need to know a lot about the characteristics and the achievements of each dynasty, so you're prepared to excavate whenever y'all are being archaeologists, right? Because you will be excavating and relying on each other heavily when you guys are excavating. The last question right here, it says, which dynasty do you feel most improved the life of the ancient Chinese? So not which one was the most interesting, but which one do you think actually benefited the people of China? Does that make sense? Okay. You might not have time to answer that today. I'm going to give you guys 30 minutes. I know y'all might feel like that's a lot of time, but so far I've had people struggling to finish. So I'm going to give you 30 minutes. Make sure you're working with your group. I'm going to be coming around and making sure that you're talking with your group and you're working together well and you're being good communicators.
Well, right now, I was bringing the Qin, the first emperor of China.
They believe in God.
In the book, it has different times. Here, I'm reading. Maybe a Chinese god.
It's a finality of pen.
Yeah, Chinese got it. Also, think back to Mulan. I know, we're bringing it back.
Oh, the ancestors.
Good, yeah. So that was the Shang dynasty. So they would pray to their So that would be a character. The question was, which dynasty do you think was the most beneficial or like improving the daily life for the people of China? So what did you guys think? Did y'all pick different things? Did y'all pick the same?
We picked different reasons.
All right. Which dynasty did y'all pick? The Han dynasty. Okay, harassing everyone today. How was the Han dynasty benefiting the people of China though? How did it help them?
Make a text.
What did it do? What did it bring to the people of China? More fair? With what? With the beige? With the what? Okay, they were less strict. Yeah, so they all want to be on that river valley because it's used for farming, right? That concludes the lesson, and I think the kids really did a good job of picking up on the differences between what an achievement is and then also what a characteristic of that civilization is. Going one-on-one to each group, I really got to see that the students were able to categorize and kind of identify the differences between the dynasties and how they progressed from using maybe writing systems that were written on bones to all the way at the end, the last dynasty, to where they were writing on paper and how they progressed and advanced. So they're going to use that paper that was actually a resource from Louisiana Believes and from the Scope and Sequence for Social Studies. They're going to use that for their next lesson, and it's going to help guide them as their archaeologists, and they are identifying which artifact belongs to which dynasty.